Hello, and welcome to the Bonfire Scientist channel. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Today, we will be talking about trees. Actually, the secret lives of trees and understanding forest communication. I want you to take a moment and picture a forest. What do you see? Perhaps you imagine towering trunks reaching for the sky, a dense canopy of green leaves filtering the sunlight into 1,000 dancing beams on the forest floor. You might hear the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant call of a bird, the snap of a twig underfoot. It's a place of peace, of solitude, of quiet grandeur. For most of human history, that's how we've seen forests, as a collection of silent, solitary giants. We walk through them. We have picnics under their sprawling branches. We admire their stoic beauty. We see them as individuals, noble and majestic, but ultimately alone. Each tree is an island, competing with its neighbors for the best patch of sunlight, the deepest draught of water, a firm foothold in the earth. But what if I told you that this picture, as beautiful as it is fundamentally incomplete? What if I told you that these silent sentinels are not so silent after all? That beneath the quiet solitude we perceive, there lies a bustling, complex, and downright chatty community. Today, we're embarking on a journey deep into the heart of the woods to uncover the secret lives of trees, understanding forest communication. And no, I promise I haven't been sampling any funny-looking mushrooms from the forest floor. The science we're about to explore is real, and it's more spectacular, more intricate, and more mind-bending than you could ever imagine. We are going to pull back the curtain of bark and leaves to reveal a hidden social network, a biological internet that puts our own technology to shame. We're going to eavesdrop on conversations happening all around us in languages we're only just beginning to decipher. Forget everything you thought you knew about trees just standing there looking, well, tree-like. The forest is a society. It has a pulse, a memory, and a voice. And over the next 4 hours, we're going to become fluent in its language. We'll explore how trees share food with their neighbors, how they warn each other of impending danger, and how they nurture their young with a tenderness that would rival any animal parent. It's like a subterranean soap opera, but with a lot more chlorophyll and slightly less drama over who left the toilet seat up. We'll meet the main players in this woodland drama. We'll get to know the wise old mother trees that act as the central hubs of their communities. We'll be introduced to the real network engineers of the forest, the humble but powerful fungi that act as the switchboard operators, the couriers, and the translators. So, find a comfortable chair, maybe pour yourself a cup of tea, and prepare to be amazed. This isn't just a story about plants, it's a story about community, cooperation, and a form of intelligence that operates on a scale and a timeline far beyond our own. By the end of our journey, I guarantee you will never look at a simple walk in the park the same way again. The forest is about to tell you its secrets. The only question is, are you ready to listen? So, let's start with the basics. What is a tree? On the surface, it's a simple question. It's a tall, woody plant with a single main stem or trunk and branches that bear leaves. Its roots anchor it to the ground and suck up water and nutrients. Its leaves soak up sunlight and, through the magical process of photosynthesis, convert that light into energy. Simple enough, right? The defending other senses is right there. But that's like saying a human is just a collection of cells with a heartbeat. It's technically true, but it misses the entire spectacular picture of what it means to be alive and part of a society. For centuries, our scientific understanding of forests was framed by one powerful idea: competition. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and the concept of survival of the fittest seemed to explain the forest perfectly. But one of that was the better. We saw it as a brutal, silent battlefield. The tallest tree wins the race for sunlight, casting its neighbors into shadow. Its roots spread the widest and deepest, hogging all the water and nutrients in the soil. The others, the smaller, weaker ones, simply have to make do with the leftovers, or wither and die. It's a classic relentless gladiator match, played out in slow motion over decades and centuries. What is this real were we do in ad? It was stiff. This view shaped our entire relationship with forests. We managed them like a farmer manages a crop of corn, thinning out the weaker trees to allow the stronger, more commercially valuable ones to grow bigger, faster. We assumed they were all in it for themselves, so what harm could there be in removing a few competitors? But what if that's only half the story? What if, in reality, forests are less like a Roman amphitheater and more like a tightly knit cooperative village? This is the revolutionary idea that has been brought into the light by pioneering scientists like Dr. Suzanne Simard in Canada and Peter Wohlleben, a forester in Germany. Their work, building on the discoveries of others, paints a picture of the forest that is radically different and infinitely more complex. They have discovered that trees are not isolated individuals. They are intricately and intimately connected, forming vast, complex networks that link tree to tree, grove to grove, and even species to species. And the key to this incredible connection, the central infrastructure for this bustling society, isn't happening up in the branches where we can see it. It's happening deep underground in the dark, silent soil beneath our feet. Imagine, if you will, that the forest floor is just the surface layer. Beneath it lies a biological superhighway, a subterranean subway system of unimaginable complexity. It's a network made of shimmering, gossamer thin threads that connect the roots of one tree to the roots of another, and another, and another. This isn't science fiction. This is the Wood Wide Web. Yes, you heard that right, the Wood Wide Web. It's a term coined by scientists to describe this incredible underground network. It's like our own internet, but it's alive. It smells more of rich earth and damp leaves, and it definitely doesn't bombard you with cat videos or political arguments. Although, I'm sure if squirrels could figure out how to upload content, they'd give it a good try. They seem to have the frantic energy for it. This network doesn't transmit data in the form of ones and zeros. It transmits life itself. Through these connections, trees can share food, send water to their thirsty neighbors, and transmit urgent warnings about pests and diseases. They can support the young, care for the old and sick, and work together to create a stable, resilient, and healthy community for everyone. This discovery fundamentally flips our old understanding on its head. It suggests that cooperation, not just competition, is a primary driver of life in the forest. It reveals a level of complexity and interdependence that we are only just beginning to appreciate. So, how does it all work? Who built this incredible underground internet? For that, we need to introduce the real masterminds of the forest floor, the tiny, often overlooked partners without whom none of this would be possible. So, how on earth does this wood wide web actually work? If the trees are the computers, who provides the internet service? The heroes of our story, the network architects and biological engineers of the forest, are not the trees themselves. They are their tiny, ancient and utterly essential partners: fungi. Specifically, a group of fungi known as mycorrhizal fungi. Now, I know what you might be thinking. The word fungus doesn't always conjure the most heroic images. It might bring to mind a fuzzy green patch on a forgotten loaf of bread, or a stubborn case of athlete's foot, or perhaps a slimy mushroom you'd warn your kids not to touch. But the fungal kingdom is a world unto itself, a kingdom as distinct from plants as animals are. And it is vast, vital, and in this case, incredibly benevolent. Mycorrhizal fungi are the good guys, the unsung heroes of the soil. The word itself gives us a clue. Myco comes from the Greek word for fungus, and rhiza comes from the Greek word for root, fungus root, and that's exactly what it is. These fungi form a symbiotic or mutually beneficial relationship with the roots of over 90% of all plant species on Earth, including almost all trees. It's a classic you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours scenario. One of the most successful partnerships in the history of life. Let's break down the deal. The tree is a master of solar power. Through photosynthesis, it uses sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars, a form of carbon that is pure energy. It's a sugar factory, and on a sunny day, it often produces more of this sugary goodness than it needs for its own immediate growth. The fungus, on the other hand, is a master miner. It cannot produce its own food through photosynthesis, but its body is made up of a vast, sprawling network of incredibly fine, thread-like structures called mycelium. These threads, or hyphae, are so fine that they can explore the soil on a microscopic level, venturing into tiny crevices and pores that a tree's chunky roots could never hope to reach. The mycelial network of a single fungus can be astonishingly large, stretching for kilometers and weaving through the soil like a living net. This makes them exceptionally good at finding and absorbing crucial mineral nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, as well as water. It's the ultimate underground trade deal. The fungus effectively extends the tree's root system by 100 or even 1,000 times. The tree gets essential minerals it couldn't get on its own, and the fungus gets a reliable source of energy from the sun by proxy. It's a win-win. So how does this connection physically work? There are two main types. The first are the ectomycorrhizal fungi, common with trees like pines, oaks, and beeches. These fungi form a dense sheath, like a thick fuzzy sock, around the outside of the root tips. From this sheath, the mycelial threads spread out into the soil. The second type are the endomycorrhizal fungi, also known as arbuscular mycorrhiza. These are even more intimate. They don't just form a sock on the outside, they actually penetrate into the cells of the tree's roots. Once inside, they form these incredible, intricate tree-like structures called arbuscules. It's from these structures that the exchange happens. The tree delivers carbon, and the fungus delivers nutrients right inside the tree's own cellular structure. It's the biological equivalent of plugging a USB cable directly into your brain. And here's the crucial part that creates the Wood Wide Web. The mycelial network of a single fungus doesn't just connect to one tree. Its vast, sprawling web will connect with the roots of many different trees in the forest. And a single tree won't just be connected to one type of fungus. It might be colonized by dozens of different fungal species. The result is a mind-bogglingly complex, overlapping, multi-layered network. It's a web of fungus connecting tree to tree to tree, creating a direct physical link between them. A towering Douglas fir can be connected to a nearby paper birch. An ancient oak can be linked to a young maple sapling. The entire forest floor is woven together into a single unified entity. This isn't just a metaphor, it's a physical reality. This is the infrastructure that allows the forest to communicate. Now that we have this incredible network in place, this superhighway of fungal threads, what can the trees actually do with it? This is where things go from being nearly amazing to truly profound. This network allows for the sharing of resources on a massive scale. It turns a competitive forest into a cooperative one. Let's go back to the idea of a mother tree. This is a term popularized by Dr. Simard to describe the largest, oldest trees in a. They are the grand central stations of the wood wide web. Now imagine a tiny seedling, a baby tree, trying to make its way in the world on the forest floor. It's a tough life. The giant canopy of the mother tree and her neighbors blocks out most of the sunlight. The big trees are the primary users of the water in the soil. In the old competitive view of the forest, that seedling was out of luck. It was a race, and the seedling was starting 100 meters behind in a 100-meter dash. But through the wood wide web, something incredible happens. The mother tree, with her abundance of sunlight and sugar, can send her excess carbon, her food, through the fungal network directly to the struggling seedlings in her understory. It's like an intravenous drip of life-giving energy. She is feeding the next generation, giving them the strength they need to survive those difficult early years until they can reach the sunlight themselves. This isn't just a theory. Dr. Simard and her team conducted groundbreaking experiments to prove it. They used different isotopes of carbon, think of them as trackable tags, to follow the flow of resources through the forest. They would place a plastic bag over a branch of a large mother tree and inject it with a specific type of carbon dioxide gas. The tree would photosynthesize this tagged carbon into sugar. Then, using sensitive detectors, they could track where that specific carbon went. And sure enough, they found it. It traveled down the trunk, into the roots, out into the fungal network, and then up into the neighboring seedlings. The evidence was undeniable. The big trees were actively nurturing the small ones. But the discovery that really sent shockwaves through the scientific community was this. Mother trees can apparently recognize their own kin. When a mother tree is connected to both its own seedlings and the seedlings of a stranger tree, it will preferentially send more carbon and resources to its own offspring. How is this possible? The mechanism is still being researched, but it's thought that trees can recognize the unique chemical or electrical signals of their relatives through the root and fungal networks. It's a form of nepotism, but in a good way. The mother tree is ensuring the survival of her own genetic line. She is passing on her legacy, not just through her seeds, but by actively supporting her children after they've sprouted. It's like a parent slipping their kid a $20 bill, but instead of cash, it's a life-sustaining stream of liquid carbon. And it doesn't just happen between parents and children. Trees will share resources with completely different. In the mixed forests of North America, a Douglas fir might grow next to a paper birch. These two trees have very different life strategies. The birch is deciduous, meaning it has broad leaves that it sheds in the autumn. The fir is an evergreen, with needles it keeps all year round. In the summer, the birch tree, with its huge canopy of leaves, is a photosynthetic powerhouse. It's making more sugar than it knows what to do with. The fir, especially if it's smaller and in the shade, might be struggling a bit. So, the birch sends some of its excess carbon over to the fir through their shared fungal network. But then, winter comes. The birch tree drops all its leaves and goes dormant. It can't photosynthesize at all. The fir, however, is still green. On a mild, sunny winter or early spring day, it can still make a little bit of sugar. And what does it do? It returns the favor, sending carbon back to the dormant birch tree to help keep it alive until its own leaves can grow back. It's an interspecies bartering system, a beautiful reciprocal exchange that helps the entire forest community remain stable and resilient. They are literally helping each other through the hard times. That's a better and more reliable support system than most of us have. The flow of resources can also work with water. A tree with deep tap roots that can access water far below the ground can share that water through the network with a more shallow-rooted neighbor during a drought. The Wood Wide Web acts as a giant subterranean plumbing and pantry system, redistributing wealth to where it's needed most. It's a system designed for the collective good, ensuring the survival not just of the fittest individuals, but of the entire interconnected ecosystem. The Wood Wide Web is a phenomenal system for communication. It's robust, it's targeted, and it's perfect for sharing resources and sending complex information underground. But it's not the only way trees talk. The underground network is like the forest's landline telephone system. Sometimes, though, you need a faster, more widespread broadcast. Sometimes you need a megaphone, and for that, trees use the air itself. Let's travel for a moment from the damp forests of North America to the sun-drenched savannas of Africa. Here, acacia trees dot the landscape, and they have a persistent and rather tall problem. Giraffes. A giraffe, with its long neck, can reach the tender, nutritious leaves high up on an acacia, bypassing the thorny defenses on the lower branches. For the tree, this is a direct attack. Concerned, it's being wounded and eaten alive. A tree can't just uproot itself and run away. It can't swat the giraffe with a branch. It has to stand and take it. But it doesn't have to take it quietly. When its leaves are torn or chewed, the acacia tree does something remarkable. It releases a cocktail of chemical compounds into the air. These are known as volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. You can think of it as a scream, but a silent chemical one. It's an airborne distress signal. This plume of chemicals drifts on the breeze like a puff of perfume, and the other acacia trees nearby have the ability to smell it. Their leaves are covered in receptors that can detect these specific warning chemicals. When they receive the message, it's crystal clear. Pest attack in progress, giraffes in the vicinity, man the defenses. In response to this airborne alert, the neighboring trees, even those that haven't been touched yet, spring into action. They begin to pump tannins and other bitter, toxic alkaloids into their own leaves. Tannins are compounds that bind to proteins, making the leaves difficult to digest and taste awful. Within minutes, the leaves of the surrounding trees become unpalatable and even poisonous. So by the time the giraffe finishes its meal at the first tree and moseys on over to the next one for dessert, it gets a rude surprise. It takes one bite and gets a mouthful of nasty, indigestible leaves. Yuck. The buffet is officially closed. This phenomenon was one of the very first clues that scientists had that trees could communicate with each other. Decades before the Wood Wide Web was fully understood. Researchers in the 1980s were puzzled by the strange feeding habits of giraffes and other herbivores. They noticed that the animals would only feed on one acacia tree in a grove for a short period before abandoning it and moving on. But curiously, they wouldn't just move to the tree next door. They would often walk 100 meters or more, and specifically, they would walk upwind to a tree that couldn't possibly have received the airborne warning signal. It was an incredible revelation. The giraffes, it seemed, were being outsmarted by their lunch. They had learned over generations that once an acacia sounds the alarm, the whole neighborhood becomes inedible. They knew they had to find a tree that hadn't yet gotten the message. This isn't unique to acacias and giraffes. It happens all over the world. When a willow tree is attacked by caterpillars, it releases chemicals that not only make its own leaves less tasty, but also warn its neighbors to do the same. Even a simple sagebrush plant, when clipped by researchers, will release chemicals that nearby wild tobacco plants can interpret. In response, the tobacco plants will ramp up their production of nicotine, a potent insecticide, to ward off the anticipated attack. It's the botanical equivalent of your neighbor shouting over the fence, "Hey, there's a door-to-door salesperson coming your way. Quick, pretend you're not home and turn off the lights." And the communication can be even more specific and sophisticated. Sometimes the message isn't just, "Help, I'm being attacked." Sometimes it's a specific call for a bodyguard. When some plants are being eaten by caterpillars, they release a specific VOC that sends a targeted message. It's an SOS signal that is irresistible to parasitic wasps. These wasps are the natural enemy of the caterpillar. They fly in, attracted by the plant's chemical cry for help, and they lay their eggs inside the caterpillar. When the wasp larvae hatch, they eat the caterpillar from the inside out. It's gruesome, but incredibly effective. The tree gets its pest problem eliminated. The wasp gets a safe nursery and a guaranteed food source for its young. And the caterpillar, well, the caterpillar has a very, very bad day. This is a three-way conversation. The plant, the herbivore. While airborne signals are great for a quick, widespread alert, what if the threat is slower, more insidious, and lurking in the soil? Communication isn't always about helping each other out. Sometimes it's about setting boundaries. Sometimes it's about claiming your territory. And sometimes it's about outright chemical warfare. This is where we encounter the darker side of plant communication, a concept known as allelopathy. Allelopathy is when one plant produces and releases biochemicals into the environment that have a negative effect on their neighbors. It's the plant kingdom's version of building a fortress and defending it with chemical weapons. The black walnut tree is the most famous, or perhaps infamous, example of this. It's a beautiful tree, but it's not a very good neighbor. The black walnut produces a chemical called hydrojuglone in its leaves, stems, and fruit hulls. When this chemical is exposed to air or soil, it oxidizes into a highly toxic compound called juglone. Juglone is released from the tree's roots and also leaches into the soil from decaying leaves and nuts. For many other plants, juglone is deadly. It inhibits their ability to respire, effectively suffocating them on a cellular level. Anyone who has tried to plant a vegetable garden near a black walnut tree knows this pain. Tomatoes, potatoes, apple trees, and many other popular plants will wither and die if their roots come into contact with this chemical perimeter. The black walnut is essentially poisoning the soil around it to eliminate any competition for water, sunlight, and nutrients. It's a ruthless but highly effective survival strategy. It's not sending a warning, it's taking preemptive action. It's the plant kingdom's version of building a fence and putting up a sign that says, "No trespassing. Violators will be chemically disintegrated." But this chemical chatter isn't always so aggressive. The underground root and fungal network, the wood wide web, can also be used to transmit more targeted, defensive warnings. Let's say a tree is attacked by a root-eating insect or a fungal disease like root rot. An airborne signal won't do much good against a threat that's already underground. Instead, the attacked tree can send highly specific chemical or electrical signals out through the mycorrhizal network. It's a much more direct and secure line of communication. When the neighboring trees receive this specific distress signal, they can decipher the message. Alert! Root-boring beetles detected in Sector 7G, or Warning! Pathogenic fungus of the species Armillaria is on the move. This gives the other trees a crucial head start. They can begin to mount a defense before the threat even reaches them. They might start producing antifungal compounds or chemicals that make their roots taste bad to insects. They can prime their immune systems, ready for the coming invasion. It's a forest-wide, coordinated immune response. It shows just how deeply interconnected and interdependent the community really is. They are sharing information to protect the health of the entire system. Think of it like a biological pre-crime unit for plants. By sharing information about threats, the whole community becomes more resilient and much harder for pests and diseases to overwhelm. So we have this incredible duality. On one hand, trees use chemicals to wage war, to claim territory and suppress their rivals. On the other, they use the very same underground pathways to send cooperative warnings, to share information, and to mount a collective defense. It paints a picture of a society that is just as complex as our own, with its own mix of conflict and cooperation, competition and community. The soil beneath our feet is a chemical battleground, a bustling information exchange, and the foundation of the forest's social fabric. So far, we focused almost exclusively on how trees talk to other trees, either through the air or through their fungal network. But a forest is so much more than just trees. It's a complex, multi-layered ecosystem teeming with millions of other organisms, from microscopic bacteria to giant bears. And trees are in constant communication with this entire community. Their conversations are not private. They are part of a much larger ecological dialogue, often brokered by other living things. Let's start with the most obvious example: pollination. A flower is not just a pretty decoration, it is a carefully crafted advertisement. Its bright colors, intricate patterns, and sweet, intoxicating scent are a clear and direct signal to a bee, a butterfly, or a hummingbird. The message is simple and alluring. Hey, over here, I have a delicious, high-energy reward for you in the form of sugary nectar. Come and get it. The pollinator, attracted by this multi-sensory message, comes in for a drink. While it's sipping the nectar, its body gets dusted with the flower's pollen. Then, it flies off to the next flower, carrying the pollen with it and completing the act of pollination, allowing the plant to reproduce. It's a beautiful transaction. The tree gets its genetic material transported to another flower, ensuring the creation of seeds for the next generation. The pollinator gets a meal. It's a conversation where both parties benefit immensely. Then there's the next stage, the fruit. A hard, green, unripe apple is sending a clear chemical message. Stay away. I'm not ready yet. I'm bitter and hard to digest. But once the seeds inside are mature, the tree changes its tune. The apple turns a vibrant red or yellow. It becomes soft, sweet, and juicy. The chemical message is now an open invitation. Come and get it. Here is a delicious, nutritious package of food. The price of admission is simple. Eat this, and please, carry my seeds somewhere else, and, ahem, deposit them later, preferably with a nice little packet of all-natural fertilizer. It's a brilliant strategy. The tree is outsourcing its seed dispersal to a willing, and often unwitting, mobile delivery service. A bird eats a berry, flies miles away, and excretes the seed, planting a new tree in a brand new location. A squirrel buries an acorn, intending to come back for it later, but inevitably forgets where it put it. We've all been there, squirrels. We've all walked into a room and forgotten why we went in there. The squirrel's forgetfulness becomes the oak tree's triumph. That conversation involves more than just the neighboring trees. Birds are listening in too. When a pine tree is infested with bark beetles, for instance, the beetles burrowing under the bark cause the tree to release a specific blend of chemical scents. Think of it as the scent of wounded pine. This scent is an SOS signal that is broadcast to the entire forest, and it's a dinner bell for certain species of birds, like woodpeckers. Woodpeckers have learned to associate this specific scent with a tasty beetle buffet. They are drawn to the distressed tree, where they use their powerful beaks to chip away the bark and feast on the beetle larvae. This is another perfect example of a multi-species conversation. The tree sends out a cry for help. The woodpecker receives the message and responds, getting a meal for itself. And in the process, the woodpecker provides an invaluable pest control service, potentially saving the tree's life. Everybody wins, well, except for the beetles, of course. Their day is definitely ruined. Even the falling of leaves in autumn is a form of communication. It's a signal to the entire community of decomposers on the forest floor, the bacteria, the fungi, the earthworms, the insects. The message is, here is a massive donation of carbon and nutrients. Please get to work breaking this down and recycling it back into the soil so that it can be used again next spring. The vibrant colors of autumn leaves might even be a signal to insects like aphids, telling them to go lay their eggs elsewhere because the tree is about to shut down for the winter and is a poor host. The forest is a symphony of signals. Scents, colors, sounds, and chemicals, all weaving together to create a web of interdependence. Trees are not just talking to each other, they are the central communicators, the hubs of a conversation that involves every single member of their vast, sprawling community. We now arrive at a truly mind-bending and perhaps controversial concept. We've established that forests are cooperative, communicative communities. But can a forest have a memory? Can it learn? Can it be intelligent? Now, the word intelligence is a loaded one, and we have to be very careful here. We don't mean that a tree is sitting there in the woods, pondering the meaning of life or doing complex calculus in its sap. It doesn't have a brain or a central nervous system in the way an animal does. But if we define intelligence in a broader sense, as the ability to perceive the environment, to process information, to learn from past experiences, to solve complex problems, and to adapt behavior accordingly, then a forest, as a collective superorganism, certainly exhibits qualities that look a lot like intelligence. Let's start with memory. A single tree is a living record of the past. Its rings tell a story of wet years and dry years, of rapid growth and periods of struggle. But the memory of a forest is held in more than just tree rings. It's held within the very structure of the wood wide web and in the genetics of its oldest inhabitants. The mother trees we spoke of earlier are living libraries of information and experience. An ancient Douglas fir that has lived for 800 years has survived countless droughts, fires, windstorms, insect plagues, and cold winters. It has weathered it all. This memory of how to survive these challenges is encoded in its genetics, which it passes on to its offspring. But it's more than just genetic. Through the fungal network, the mother tree can support its community based on its experience. For example, it might send more water to its neighbors during a dry spell because it has learned from past droughts that this cooperative action helps the whole community survive. The network itself can also learn and adapt. The fungal connections are not static. They are constantly growing, dying back, and rerouting. The pathways of communication and resource sharing can be strengthened or weakened based on the needs of the forest. After a disturbance, like a major storm that knocks down a section of trees, the network can sense this change and prioritize sending resources, carbon, nutrients, and water, to the most damaged areas to help speed up recovery and support the growth of new saplings. It's a decentralized, self-organizing system that adapts to changing conditions to maintain its own health. It's problem-solving on a massive, slow-motion scale. This is a very different kind of intelligence from our own fast-paced, individual, brain-centered consciousness. It is a slow, deliberate, distributed intelligence. It operates on a timescale that we humans, with our fleeting lifespans, can barely comprehend. A tree might consider a decision, like which way to grow a major branch, for decades. It makes my own internal struggle over what to have for dinner seem rather trivial and hasty in comparison. Peter Wohlleben, the German forester, argues that trees can even learn. He describes how beech trees in his forest seem to know when to produce a large crop of beech nuts. They do this in a synchronized way, a phenomenon called a mast year. All the trees in a huge area will produce a massive number of nuts in the same year, and then very few for several years after. The likely reason for this is to outsmart the animals that eat their seeds, like wild boars and deer. In the lean years, the animal populations are kept low because there's not much food. Then, in the mast year, the trees produce such an incredible glut of nuts that the animals can eat their fill, and there are still thousands of seeds left over that can successfully sprout and grow. How do they coordinate this over such a vast area? They are communicating, likely through the wood wide web, sending chemical signals that say, "This is the year, let's do it." They are collectively remembering the last mast year and timing the next one for maximum effect. This is a coordinated, strategic decision made by a community to ensure its long-term survival. If that isn't a form of intelligence, what is? We are just beginning to scratch the surface of this profound concept, but it requires us to expand our own definition of what it means to be intelligent, to remember, and to learn. So, we have journeyed deep into the soil and high into the canopy. We've eavesdropped on the secret conversations of the forest. We've seen that trees are not solitary competing individuals, but are in fact deeply interconnected members of a vibrant, communicative, and cooperative society. They share, they warn, they nurture, and they learn. The question we must now ask ourselves is, so what? What does this new understanding mean for us, for how we view and, more importantly, how we treat our planet's forests? Frankly, it changes everything. It means that our traditional forestry practices, which are often based on the old model of competition, are fundamentally flawed. Take the practice of clear cutting, where every tree in a designated area is harvested. From the old perspective, this was just efficient resource extraction. You take the valuable timber and then replant a new, uniform crop of fast-growing trees. But from the perspective of the wood wide web, clear cutting is an apocalypse. It's not just about removing individual trees, it's about destroying an entire social network. It's ripping out the grand central stations, tearing up all the communication lines, and demolishing the central library. It's the equivalent of taking a thriving city and bulldozing every single building, road, power line, and internet cable. The delicate fungal network, which took centuries or even millennia to develop, is exposed to the harsh sun and dies. The collective memory of the forest is erased. The intricate systems of resource sharing and mutual defense are obliterated. When we replant, we often plant a monoculture, just one single species of tree. This new forest is a pale imitation of what was lost. It's a silent, disconnected crowd of strangers, not the rich, talkative, multi-generational community that existed before. It's far more vulnerable to disease, drought, and pests because the lines of communication have been cut. We've been acting like someone who buys a fancy new supercomputer and immediately smashes the router and the motherboard with a hammer, and then wonders why they can't get online. We need to become better IT support for the wood wide web. This new knowledge gives us a powerful new imperative for conservation. It tells us that protecting individual hero trees or planting a few new saplings, while good, is not enough. We must protect the entire system: the soil, the fungi, the understory plants, the bacteria, the insects, the whole living, breathing community. It is the integrity of the network that matters most. Imagine the chemical whispers floating on the breeze, a scent of pine that is not just a pleasant smell but a cry for help, the sweet perfume of a flower that is not just a scent but an invitation, a bitter taste in a leaf that is not just a flavor but a shouted warning. You are not just standing in a collection of trees. You are standing in the middle of a conversation that has been going on uninterrupted for hundreds of millions of years. A slow, profound, and deeply intelligent conversation about survival, about community, and about life itself. The secret lives of trees are perhaps not so secret anymore. Thanks to the patient and brilliant work of scientists and observers around the world, we are finally beginning to understand their language. We are learning to decipher the messages written in the soil, carried on the air, and embodied in the very structure of the forest community. And by understanding this language, we can learn to be better partners in this great, green, global society. We can learn to protect not just the trees themselves, but the connections between them. We can learn to listen. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the secret lives of trees and the wonders of forest communication. May your next walk in the woods be a little less quiet and a whole lot more magical.